Hello, my name is Leslie Berger, and I'd like to welcome you to this episode of Renew. Renew is a show about the College of Forest Resources at Mississippi State University. At the College of Forest Resources, we work as a unit to promote conservation, management, and wise use of our natural resources. The College of Forest Resources has 3 departments, and today we're going to be talking with some of the people within the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Aquaculture. Joining me right now is Dr. Mike Sandell. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're brand new to Mississippi State, but not to the science that we're going to talk about just for a little bit. So tell me and those who are watching a little bit about your work and the kinds of things that you investigate as a scientist.
Sure. I grew up in Midwestern state, in the middle of Ohio, and spent all of my time after school flipping rocks and chasing salamanders and snakes and all that kind of stuff and catching fish. And when I went to college, I realized that could actually be a profession. And I was really excited to learn that and to learn from really great undergraduate professors at Ohio State and later at the University of Alabama for grad school. And yeah, I just really fell in love with the idea of freshwater ecosystems and their conservation, and really biodiversity is what captivated me. Just to go out, and every time you go into the nature, you find something new, a new plant, a new animal, which I'm still doing today, and very happy about it.
Yeah. So one of the ways you look for organisms in aquatic systems and water-based systems is through a technique called eDNA, environmental DNA.
Right.
So tell me a little bit more about what that is and how it works, because it's really cool stuff.
Sure, yeah, certainly. I think when the first person thought about environmental DNA, people probably rolled their eyes and thought they were crazy.
Correct.
So the idea is that there's DNA everywhere in our environment, just like you might think about viruses or bacteria or something that you can't see. And this DNA can come from any organism, including humans, but most often we're collecting eDNA from water samples, and most of the animal DNA that we get out of those samples is going to be fish. This is a really nice tool because we can detect the presence of a species without actually collecting it. So an endangered species, for example, that's very rare and sensitive to the collection process could be harmed when we do our traditional sampling.
Sure.
So now we have a tool that we can go out into the wilderness, and including the Amazon rainforest, and to collect a water sample and determine what species are present using the DNA.
Right. So it's a lot less environmentally and individually taxing on to be able to collect this information, because you just collect a water sample,
Exactly.
take it back to the lab, and screen it and see if that, like you said, the endangered animals are even more difficult to pick up, because some of those traditional techniques like using nets, you're just going to not have the chance of picking them up because they're not as common by definition.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's really interesting. So how do you take these field experiences and move them into a classroom where you're teaching students?
Yeah, the laboratory sections of the courses that I teach are an excellent opportunity for students to really get a hands-on experience and learn these techniques. So we go out into the field. We will collect fishes using traditional survey methods. We'll use a seine or a dip net, or sometimes an electrical tool like an electrofishing backpack shocker. And we'll gather data on the community of fish that we see with our own hands and our own eyes. And then we'll do the eDNA analysis to compare what we get from the water sample and see if we can match those two things up. Because it's not a one-for-one correlation. There is some art to it.
Sure. So why is this important? Why is it relevant that we understand this?
Well, for the last 100 years, freshwater ecosystems have become imperiled. There's a large proportion of animals that are on the endangered species list are freshwater organisms. So fishes, mussels, crayfishes, these are all groups that are they're declining very quickly relative to other groups. And in order to protect them, we have to know where they're at and how they're doing, how they're reproducing, how fast they're growing, and of course about their health. So one of the problems that we are trying to tackle with eDNA and other methods is the study of invasive species. So these are fish or other organisms that are introduced to a new area, and we need to be able to track them as quickly as possible and try to mitigate the effects of those invaders.
Sure, because they can create havoc to those ecosystems and disrupt that.
Sure.
You don't have a very long time left, but you've been to some really interesting places. So what's been your favorite place that you've gone to do research?
Really fortunate to work with a fantastic group of collaborators from Michigan State and also from Mississippi State Department of Biology. We were funded to go to the Amazon rainforest in French Guiana. And so for the last 3 years, we've spent our summers doing the same thing I did as a kid, flipping rocks,
Right.
dragging the net through the water, and seeing what we can find in the Amazon this time.
Correct. So you get paid to do that very
Yep.
same thing that maybe people thought was just playing.
Exactly. And now I get to take my students with me. So
Correct.
everybody gets to have fun.
Right. No, that sounds amazing. If you need a volunteer to go along and help chaperone, carry stuff, just let me know.
Let's do it,
I
yeah.
got my passport. I'll be
Yeah,
able
that
to go
stuff gets
along.
heavy.
It does. Well, I've enjoyed visiting with you, and I understand we're going to visit with your graduate student here in just a minute.
Yes.
So that'll be really interesting. I hope the rest of you will join us when we return after this break.
Want a career as big as the outdoors? Want to have an impact on the environment? The College of Forest Resources at Mississippi State University delivers hands-on training, ensuring clean air and water, wildlife habitats, and a sustainable environment. Creating new wood products and retooling old ones for today and tomorrow. Find a career in whatever path you choose. Majors in forestry, natural resource and environmental conservation, sustainable bioproducts, wildlife, fisheries, and aquaculture. Want a career as big as the outdoors? Choose the College of Forest Resources at Mississippi State University.
Discovery. It tells our history and determines our future. At Mississippi State University, we're digging deep, unlocking an understanding of our past, validating it. Middle East exploration by faculty and students is uncovering evidence that unravels ancient mysteries. Scholars have long thought of the biblical kings David and Solomon as mythological figures. Our research offers evidence that supports their existence, boosting MSU into an international league of experts on archaeology. Now we're changing the way people think about the past, opening up new possibilities of understanding for future generations. Digging deeper, learning more.
Welcome back. We've been learning about the fisheries work that's happening in the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Aquaculture at Mississippi State. And joining me now is a graduate student who's doing his work in that department, Mr. Matthew Scott.
Hey,
Hi, thanks for joining me.
thanks for having me.
I understand you've been working with Dr. Sandell,
Yes.
doing some fisheries work, fisheries research. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so I'm on Dr. Sandell's project going out to the French Guiana and looking for reservoirs for diseases. So particularly we're looking for a disease-causing microbe called Mycobacterium ulcerans.
Called what?
Mycobacterium ulcerans.
Okay.
Yeah, so it causes a disease called Buruli ulcer.
Okay.
It's a neglected tropical disease that affects a lot of people in tropical ecosystems. So I play my part in doing that by collecting fish microbiomes
Okay.
in their internal body cavity and also on their skin, looking for like different disease-causing microbes like Mycobacterium ulcerans.
Okay, so this is a disease that can move from fish to people? No? Just
Not that
fish
we
to
know of.
fish. Okay,
Yeah.
just fish to fish.
Yeah, so they are different ecovars. It's basically like a subgroup of a species of mycobacteria. So the one that we would mostly see would be the fish ecovar, but there could also be a human ecovar on there. We don't know yet.
I get it.
Looking
Right.
for that.
Right.
Yeah.
So start with the fish part and then expand outward.
Yeah.
So did you ever think when you were a kid growing up that you would end up doing research in French Guiana?
No, but I really That was one of my dreams, though.
Was it?
Yeah. When I grew up, I watched a lot of Animal Planet. so I always wanted to go out into the Amazon and trudge around, and that's exactly what I got to do. It was amazing. Got to live my childhood dream.
That's really great. Did you do like Dr. Sandell and spend time, flipping rocks as a kid, or was it mostly just that influence of the television programming that sort of steered you to this direction of fisheries?
Yeah, it was definitely influenced by TV. I watched a lot of Bear Grylls, a lot of the Crocodile Hunter.
Right.
But I would go out in my backyard and pick up amphibians and things like that, and collect them in tanks, let them grow, release them back, and
Right.
learn, through books and things like that.
Correct. So what would you say to, a high school kid that didn't know there was such a thing, and found out that you got to do the Amazon trip and research, and they didn't even know you could be a biologist? What would you say to that young person?
Stay passionate, because when I was in high school, I didn't even know really about the field of biology. But stay passionate and let the passion kind of guide you into your career field, because I wouldn't have expected that I would have got to go to the Amazon, when I was in high school. But
Correct.
I ended up here, and I'm very happy I did.
Right. So what would be your ideal career job when you finish here? I mean, the idea is to get a degree, get a job. So if you could design the ideal job for when you graduate with your master's degree, that's what you're working on,
Yes.
what would that be?
I'd like to try to find a job working where I can work with animals, and I can also kind of do what I'm doing now, looking for things in the ecosystem that could also affect humans, and people in general.
So the intersection of
Yes,
wildlife health and environmental health and human health.
exactly.
Okay, that's the One Health that we were talking about earlier before the show started. So that's really interesting. What has been, you can't say French Guiana, what has been your most memorable experience as a graduate student besides going to French Guiana?
Oh, man. So far, I really enjoyed going boat electroshocking over this past spring break. We got to go out into like a whole fleet of like 10 boats, shocking for invasive carp and collecting them and tagging them and releasing them to find out where they're moving.
Okay, so
in
for those who don't know
watersheds.
what electroshocking is, and they have this immediate picture that might not be positive, can
Oh,
you
yeah.
explain what that is?
It's not very horrible. It's just hitting the fish with like a certain level of electricity that incapacitates them temporarily, and then we collect them with nets very gently. We put them in tanks that are aerated and
Right.
acclimated to them. And then we just tag them and release them. They come out fine.
Right.
Yeah.
And it is fun. I have done that before.
Yeah.
Not in a whole flotilla of boats, but it is a really fun experience. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining me. I've really enjoyed getting to get a chance to meet you. I see you in the Hall of Thompson, and I haven't had a chance to visit. So it's sad that we have to do it here, but I'm glad we've had this opportunity.
Yeah, it's been great.
Hope the rest of you have enjoyed learning a little bit more about the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Aquaculture at Mississippi State. Thank you for joining me. I've been your host, Leslie Berger.